Welcome to the video lecture on integrity constraints. So now this is the point in chapter 4 where we've talked about tables. You know what relations are, you know what key fields are. So now we're going to talk about constraints and what are constraints. So constraints, think of them as, a leash on a dog. All right, it's constraints are what databases use to keep control. Okay, so we're going to look at domain constraints, table 4-1, which is also slide 8. So when we look at this, notice that the fourth column is titled domain. So what we're doing here is we are constraining or controlling data that can be put into attributes or fields. So the attribute is customer ID. If you look at domain, we've got the fact that it's character and it's size 5. So that means I can't put the word Michael into customer ID. It might be all characters, but Michael is 8 characters, not 5 characters. So it constrains that. Customer IDs can only go up to, if we're using digits, again, I know we're saying characters, but if we're using digits, for instance, the set of all possible customer IDs would be 0 to 99,999. Okay, you get that idea? So 5 digits, they would all be 9s at the upper end, and at the lower end, they'd be all 0s. Okay, so that's a way of constraining the values that can be put into customer ID. We've got customer name, right, which is character size 25, right? So fortunately, things like Michael Devlin would fit in there, and company names would fit in there. But that may have to change at some point. Some of these customer names could get pretty big. We've got customer address is size 30, customer city is size 20, customer state is size 2. Right, so that keeps you from putting in, things like TXA for Texas and making a data entry error to a certain extent, right? To a certain extent. Certainly something like customer state, we would put another integrity constraint or domain constraint on it by saying that, we have a list of states and you have to pick from that list, right? So you wouldn't be able to put in TA because TA wouldn't be in a list of allowable states. You can do the same kind of thing with postal code. And then we've got order IDs and order date, right? So for instance, in order date, we couldn't put in the word shoe, right? Because it has to be a date. So we've got product IDs, product description, product finish. We get to a standard price, which has to be monetary. Most of the time when we do monetary in a lot of databases, it goes down to 4 decimal places, believe it or not. So depending on how this database is set up, we can change that and do whatever we want. So those are examples of domain constraints. We also have entity integrity. So something like that would say no primary key attribute may be null. All primary fields must have data, right? So that's making sure that the entity as a whole maintains rules of being an entity or of being a relation, right? So no primary key attribute may be null, and all the primary key fields must have data. And then there are other things that we can set up. We can set up action assertions, which are set up to enforce business rules, right? Those would be things a little bit more involved by saying, well, entity integrity says that handles the primary key. A business rule would say, I can't have a customer unless it has a customer name. Right? The customer name is not a primary key, but there are rules to make sure that our data isn't bad, right? Or that we have all the data that we need. We can't have a customer record unless we have a customer name. We can't have a customer record unless we know their phone number, something along those lines. So those are action assertions. Those are associated with business rules. And you recall our lecture on business rules from chapter 2. All right, so that is the end of my video lecture on integrity constraints. If you have any questions, remember, send me email.